Serafina's Pove. The phone rang twice before I finally gathered the courage to flip it over. My heart instantly softened, and all the trepidation disappeared at the sight of Daniel's face on the screen. As soon as I answered, his excited voice burst through the speaker. "Mom!" I sat upright on the bed, all my earlier exhaustion evaporating under my son's warmth. "Hey, baby." He squinted at the camera, and his ready smile dimmed into a tiny frown. "Mom, are you okay?" The question caught me off guard. Of course, why? He leaned closer until the camera caught only his eyes and a bit of messy hair flopping over his forehead. "You look tired and kinda jumpy. Did something happen?" A pang hit my chest, an abrupt rush of warmth and sharp tenderness swelling at his concern. This used to be my role, hovering, fussing, checking every detail to see if he was all right. Now here he was, studying me like I was the one who needed looking after. I forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a long day." "You sure?" His eyebrows knitted. "You promise?" "I promise," I said softly. Daniel was far too perceptive for his own good, and he didn't fully believe me. I could see it in the way his shoulders stayed slightly tense. But after a beat, he exhaled and crossed his arms in that miniature alpha way of his. "Okay, but if anyone bothers you, you tell me," I snorted. "And you'll what, fly here and beat them up?" The corner of his lips quirked up. "Exactly." I chuckled. "I'll keep that in mind." Satisfied, if only slightly, his grin returned, bright and wild. "So how was your first day?" His smile made mine widen. "Pretty eventful." "You have to go into details, Mom. You promised updates." I laughed. Okay, let's see." I told about the bustling Pike Place market and the flying fish that nearly smacked a tourist, the pastries so buttery they made my eyes roll back, the soap artist carving tiny lavender dragons, and the harbor breeze whipping my hair into a ridiculous halo while Elaine insisted on taking photos. And when I told him about walking past the bookstore and overhearing the women discussing Moonlit Pact, Daniel's mouth fell open. "They were talking about you? Like strangers? In the wild?" I chuckled. "Yes, in the wild. That's so cool." His earlier worry melted into a grin so wide it was almost blinding. "Mom, I wish I'd come with you. You're having so much fun without me." "Oh, sweetheart." My smile softened. "This is advanced scouting." His eyebrows shot up. "For what?" "For our trip next year, so I know all the best places to take you." Daniel gasped so loudly I was sure the whole pack house heard. "You mean it?" "I wouldn't lie about that." He threw his arms into the air and shouted, "Yes! Best mom ever!" I laughed until my eyes watered. We talked for almost half an hour, about Seattle, about his day, about how the pack warriors kept fussing over him now that he was officially heir. I was so wrapped up in Daniel that I didn't hear the voice in the background until it spoke louder. "Danny," Kieran said. "Bedtime." My breath froze. I barely had time to prepare for the sight of him when... There he was, on the screen behind our son. His hair was damp like he'd just showered, and a strand flopped across his forehead almost boyishly. His expression was gentle and fond as he looked at Daniel, but the moment his gaze flickered up and caught mine through the phone, heat shot through me so fast I nearly dropped the device. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The memory of that kiss slammed into me, overwhelming as a tidal wave. My lips tingled, my stomach flipped. Deep and low, a coil of warmth tightened, traitorous and undeniable. I swallowed hard and cleared my throat. "I should go. Good night, Danny." Kieran's voice stopped me. "Sarah." My pulse stuttered like someone had yanked the plug from my sanity. Kieran leaned down, gently pressing his head against Daniel's. The picture they made was so tender and intimate, my chest clenched. "I'm glad your travels are going smoothly," he said softly. I blinked. "Oh, yes. Thank you." He'd said he'd keep surveillance on me. If he knew about the alley incident, he gave no indication of it. "Good night," he murmured, the mundane greeting gentle and warm, affectionate in a way that hit far too close. "Good night," I managed, then ended the call before I could combust. As the screen went dark, I pressed the phone to my chest, cheeks burning. Why did my body still react to him like this? Why did just hearing him short-circuit every piece of logic I had? Why did I miss him? It had to be the bond. It had to be. Maybe it didn't need distance to wreak havoc on my psyche. There was no other explanation for why a single goodnight could feel like he'd touched me in the most intimate way possible. Desperate to think about anything else, I exhaled, letting my mind drift back to the Omega in the alley. The fear in his eyes. Those men. That cursed word, specimen. My mood dipped. Before I knew it, my fingers were already scrolling through contacts. I hovered over Lucian's name for a second longer than necessary, then tapped. He answered on the first ring. Sarah? His voice was brisk but bright. I was just thinking about you. My lips twitched. Were you now? Yes, he said, an unmistakable smile in his tone. How's Seattle treating you? You sound tired. I am, I admitted. A lot happened today. Yeah, tell me. And so I did. Every detail, from Elaine's dramatic greeting to the bookstore display to the bizarre restaurant decor. He chuckled in all the right places, teased me when I admitted posing for photos, and made a few good-natured remarks about humans' obsession with extravagant food. But when I described the alley, the men, the Omega, Lucian's tone changed instantly. Where exactly was this? He asked quietly. A few blocks from my hotel. That close, he exhaled sharply. OTS has tried to expand north for years. Seattle, Portland, even Vancouver. But every attempt we've made has met resistance. Human, political, supernatural. It always felt like someone didn't want us there. Someone? I echoed. Or something, he added. If wolves are being hunted, tagged, or trafficked. A pause. We should have seen signs, but we didn't, which means we haven't been trying hard enough. Lucian, my voice softened. Don't do that. Do what? Blame yourself for every injustice on the continent, I sighed. You've done more for vulnerable wolves than anyone else I know. If not for OTS, the world would be crawling with Omegas like the one I met. Judy, Finn, Talia, Roxy, Jessica, me. Our lives are all infinitely better because you refused to look away. Silence stretched for a heartbeat. Then he said, very quietly, thank you for saying that. I meant it. Another pause. He cleared his throat. And Sarah, are you safe? Those men weren't normal hunters or normal humans. I know, I said, but I can handle myself. You shouldn't underestimate. I'm not. Trust me. Maya trained me as if I were preparing to battle gods. And you. I smiled faintly. You made sure I didn't leave unprotected. Ah, yes. Everything delivered okay? You mean the mini arsenal I found waiting for me in the hotel when I arrived? He huffed an amused breath. That's the one. I'm curious, at what point did I tell you I was leaving to go start a small army in Seattle? I blame myself for giving Maya my itinerary and accommodation details. Lucian laughed, an honest, warm sound that melted some of the cold lingering in my chest. But then, after a moment, his tone sobered. Sarah? Yes? I miss you. My breath caught. A gentle flutter of warmth spread through my chest. It wasn't like what Kieran's voice had done to me earlier. Not the punch to the ribs. Not the dizzy rush, not the trembling heat curling low in my stomach. Lucian's words didn't ignite anything chaotic. They just rested softly in my chest, comfortable, warm, steady. I exhaled slowly. I miss you too. Lucian said something else, light, teasing, easing the moment, but I barely heard it. My mind drifted absently to two men on opposite sides of my heart, one steady as a quiet dawn, one blazing as wildfire. I wasn't ready for answers. Not yet. But as I lay back against the pillows, Lucian's quiet breathing on the other end of the line, I realized something. Distance didn't simplify my heart. It only clarified the pieces. And one piece, one dangerous, infuriating, irresistible piece, still pulsed like a second heartbeat. Even hundreds of miles away, Kieran's puff. I came here to pick up Daniel's sneakers that he'd forgotten. It didn't matter that he'd packed 6 other pairs and couldn't even remember the exact color. All that mattered was that my son needed his blue or green or purple sneakers, and I'd be a terrible father if I didn't do everything in my power to retrieve them for him. I clung to that transparent, pathetic excuse as I unlocked the door with Daniel's spare key and stepped into Sarah's house. Her presence saturated the space, scent, warmth, memory. It permeated the air, seeped into the walls, settled onto every surface, as if she had only just stepped out of the room. It enveloped me the instant I crossed the threshold, thick enough to stir the bond and tighten something deep in my chest. Ashar's voice rumbled with aching yearning. Her scent is everywhere. But I need more. So do I murmured. I moved farther inside, slow and careful, as if one wrong step might disturb the delicate illusion that she was still here, just out of sight. The living room was immaculate, almost unnervingly so. Pillows lined up perfectly. Blanket folded with her signature crisp precision, Surfaces spotless, not a single object out of place. Too clean. That was the problem. Sarah lived neatly, yes, but she lived. She left traces, an open book, a pen uncapped, a pair of slippers angled toward the couch, a hair tie abandoned on the coffee table. But now, there was nothing. Everything was tidy in a way that felt final. The sight felt like a whispered reminder. She wasn't here. She wouldn't be here tonight, or tomorrow, or for weeks, maybe months. I walked through the narrow dining area, my hand grazing the back of a chair as if touching it could bridge the distance between us. As if I might capture some last trace of her warmth in my palm. Everywhere I looked, I saw her. Sarah cooking dinner with Daniel hovering beside her. Sarah laughing softly as she watched him draw at the table. Sarah curling up on the couch with a book, legs tucked beneath her. Sarah walking past me without meeting my eyes because looking at me hurt her too much. The tightness in my chest pulsed. I climbed the stairs, my steps wavering. Daniel's room, that was my destination. But Sarah's bedroom door was open. Just a crack. Just enough. I shouldn't go in, I knew that. But my hand lifted anyway, pushing the door open until the room lay exposed, quiet, untouched, painfully empty. Her vanity displayed perfectly organized skincare bottles, a small ceramic tray with her rings, a hairbrush resting beside it with a single strand of pale hair caught in the bristles. Her nightstand had a notebook stacked on top of 2 novels, a pen tucked inside like she'd planned to pick up right where she left off. A sweater hung over the back of her desk chair. The curtains were drawn, but a small gap between the panels let in a thin sliver of afternoon light. Everything of Sarah's was here. Except Sarah. It was her room, her home, her life, and she wasn't in it. Unable to take it anymore, I turned to walk away and froze. My gaze zeroed in on the spot near the entryway where I had kissed her, where she had kissed me back, where everything inside me had detonated, and everything inside her had trembled in answer. My breath shuddered. Ashar prowled beneath my skin, restless, agitated. "You should have taken her then and there," he snarled. "Should have claimed her, marked her. Then she wouldn't be out there, alone, exposed, where anyone could touch her or tempt her or—" "Enough," I muttered. "Not enough," he snapped. "You should have been bolder. You shouldn't have stopped. Even if you were going to let her go, you should have given her an experience she'd never forget. Something she'd think about every night she was away. A memory burned into her skin so nothing else could compete." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Since when do you enjoy tawdry cliches?" "Since I realized our mate is out there meeting new people while we're standing here clutching her damn sweater," he shot back. I glanced down. Shit, I was clutching her sweater. When did I? I dropped it immediately. Ashar huffed. Pathetic. I ran a hand down my face. "I'm aware." He circled in my mind, bristling. "She'll meet someone. Don't think she won't. She's radiant, powerful, beautiful, and not everyone is a blind, deaf moron like you." That thought pierced me like a blade, because it was true. Lucian had proven that already, captivated by the very qualities I'd overlooked for years, the ones I didn't recognize until it was nearly too late. And beyond him, gods. Sarah walking freely through human and werewolf cities alike. There wasn't a soul alive with half a pulse who wouldn't notice her, want her, chase her. The idea was a nightmare. "She deserves to be wanted," I murmured, the words strained. "Yeah, no shit," Ashar snapped. "Does that mean you're going to sit here and do nothing? Just let her wander off and take her pick of the world?" "I promised her I wouldn't follow," I said. "If I leave Daniel to chase her, she'll murder me." "Good, yes. Stay with Daniel." His tone turned derisive. "Sit there like a neutered pet and twiddle your thumb. I'm sure the bond, the one she's terrified of, is enough to keep her." A muscle in my jaw ticked. I had grown complacent after the bond awakened, too confident in its inevitability, too certain that Sarah would eventually return to me. I forgot that a bond was a connection, not a chain. That Sarah was a woman who'd been suppressed, silenced, reduced for most of her life, and now that she was finally discovering herself, she might not choose me at all. I had spent 10 years destroying every reason she had to stay. Why the hell did I think awakening the bond magically erased all that? I leaned a shoulder against the wall, closing my eyes. "I can't chase her," I murmured. "What right do I have? I wasted a decade. She's finally free. If I run after her now, after I promised I wouldn't, she'll think I'm trying to trap her again." Ashar snarled, frustrated and furious. So that's it? We just wait? I told her I'd be here when she returned, I said. For Daniel. For her. I meant it. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing, damn it, he growled. Fine. You can't physically chase her, I get it. But, his tone shifted. Can't you remind her of us another way? Keep yourself in her mind, in her heart, in her thoughts. I frowned. What the hell are you suggesting? Think, Kieran, Ashar purred. You're not helpless. You're not weak. You're her mate. She left to find herself. Don't let her forget you in the process. How, slowly, a plan began to form, taking shape like mist, resolving into something solid. A way to reach Sarah without trapping her. A way to remind her she wasn't walking alone. A way to let her feel me, my support, my devotion, my patience, across whatever distance she needed. Ashar's approval hummed. Ah, there it is, you're finally thinking. For the first time since stepping into Sarah's home, I exhaled a breath that didn't hurt. I know what to do. Serafina's Pof. The next few days in Seattle passed far more peacefully than I'd expected. Calm mornings, soft rain, long walks, quiet nights. After the turbulence of the night, I arrived. The Omega, the hunters, the panic humming beneath my skin. The normalcy felt strange, but very welcome. Well, mostly normal. Because for some inexplicable reason I seemed to be drenched in good fortune. It started with breakfast on Wednesday. Elaine and I walked into a tiny cafe near the waterfront, one of those cozy, mismatched chair places run by a middle-aged couple who knew every regular by name. Before we even opened our menus, the server beamed at me. Your coffee and croissant are on the house today, she announced cheerfully. Oh, I didn't order yet, I said. You didn't have to. Customer of the day. She shrugged. Happens at random. Elaine narrowed her eyes at me. I've come here at least twice a week for 5 years. That's never happened to me. You've been here 5 minutes, Sarah. I shrugged, cheeks heating. Maybe today's my lucky day. She made a dramatic noise of betrayal, eyeing the red-bricked walls as if they had personally wedged a knife in her back. I tried not to smile as she pouted into the cappuccino she'd had to pay for. But the universe was apparently only getting started. That afternoon, when we were leaving a tiny artisan market, after I picked up a locally made candle and a pair of hand-carved bookmarks, the vendor called out to us. Wait, you qualify for our weekly promo. I blinked. Promo? You get a second item of equal value for free, she beamed. Go on, pick something else. On Thursday, after grabbing a macaron from a little dessert shop, the cashier lit up. Oh, awesome timing, you're our sweet surprise recipient of the day. I froze. What? You get double your order, on the house. She pushed a second box toward me. Later, as we were checking out of a small clothing boutique where I'd only meant to buy a pair of cozy socks, the cashier beamed. Congratulations, you just qualified for our midweek special. I raised a brow. Special? You get a second item free, anything under the same price point. On Friday morning, Elaine and I wandered into one of those cheesy souvenir shops, the kind overflowing with novelty mugs, fridge magnets, punny t-shirts, and stuffed animals wearing miniature costumes. I wasn't planning to buy anything until I saw a tiny plush wolf wearing a Seattle beanie. Daniel would have loved it, so I grabbed it and a keychain shaped like the same wolf and headed to the counter. The cashier scanned the items, then paused. Oh wow, she said. You've unlocked the traveler's perk. Elaine's head whipped around so fast I thought she'd get whiplash. The what? The cashier smiled. Every day we comp one customer's purchase. Today, that's you. By now, surprise had faded. I could only marvel. You get both items free. And, she added, pulling a small blind bag toy from beneath the counter, you get to choose a mystery souvenir. Elaine took it all as a personal affront. You're a walking four-leaf clover, she groaned that afternoon as we stepped out of a restaurant where the chef had insisted our dessert be complimentary, just because. If a breeze touches you, it becomes a blessing. If it touches me, it messes up my hair. I laughed until my stomach hurt. You know what? She suddenly declared. I'm buying a lottery ticket. I snorted. What? Some of your cosmic luck has to rub off on me. I hardly think free cheesecake translates to cosmic luck, I said gently, trying to stifle my smile. Oh, hush, gifted child of fortune. She grabbed my wrist. We're going, now. So we went. We stood at a tiny corner store while she tore through a display of scratchers. She handed me one. Good luck, she said solemnly. I snorted, scratching it with my pinky. 1-0. Elaine scratched hers. $10. She gaped at the ticket. Oh my God! It worked. Your magic rubbed off on me. It's $10, I deadpanned. $10 of proof. She grabbed my wrist triumphantly. We're buying 100 more. I bit my lower lip. Or, I could treat you to dinner? How's steak sound? She smirked. Like my luck is finally turning around. Told you cosmic luck was contagious. Her logic was so absurd I couldn't even argue. So yes, I ended up treating Elaine to a fancy meal overlooking the water. And honestly, laughing with her, eating overpriced steak, watching the lights reflect on the waves felt good. Really good. Like for a moment, I wasn't a woman taking a break from her past, her marriage, her bond, her pain. I was just Sarah. A person living her life. On the morning of my departure from Seattle, I found a bouquet waiting outside my hotel room door. White lilies and pink carnations, wrapped in soft ivory paper and tied with pale blue ribbon. Beautiful. Understated. Thoughtful. The card read, I hope these bring as much beauty to your day as you bring to my world. The card was unsigned, but the delivery label had a postmark. Los Angeles. My breath caught. For one fragile heartbeat, images sparked in my mind. Kieran, standing in a flower shop, scowling at the choices. Kieran hunched over the card, scribbling and muttering under his breath as he crossed out line after line, searching for the perfect words. But I shook the idea off instantly. No, Kieran had better things to do than loiter at flower shops for me. And even if he did, he wouldn't know my preferences. He never asked, never noticed. It was far more likely that Lucian or maybe even Maya sent them. Still, I cradled the bouquet to me, inhaling the light, sweet scent as I made my way to my rental car. I set it carefully in the passenger seat before loading the rest of my luggage. Vacation's over, I murmured to Alina as I shut the door and turned the key. You ready? Her warm hum echoed within me, and I drove. The town housing the New Moon Institute looked like something out of an academic travel blog, a place where scholars, dreamers, and eccentric geniuses gathered to argue about philosophy over overpriced chai. The town nestled at the base of sharp, snow-dusted mountains. Wide cobblestone walkways connected clusters of buildings in soft earth tones. Historic bookstores sat next to modern labs. The air tasted crisp, as if winter were already leaning over the horizon. I hadn't even stepped out of my car yet, and I already felt invigorated. With my permission, Lucian had shared my peculiar state with the OTS analytics team. After analyzing my abilities, they mentioned this place, a hub for werewolf historians, geneticists, archivists, and scholars trying to unravel the mysteries of shifting, lineage, and powers once whispered about in old myths. It was a given that this was a stop on my journey. I wanted to learn from them. I wanted to understand what was happening to me. I wanted answers that weren't colored by stigma or personal bias. And this place, with its open lawns, ivy-twined archways, and students arguing about everything from metaphysics to ethics, felt like a good start. I parked, grabbed my bag, and started toward the Institute's stone archway. The moment I stepped beneath it, a faint electric thrill shivered through me, as if the land itself hummed with old knowledge. Then, Sarah? I froze. My head snapped toward the voice. A familiar figure stood a few yards away, half-shadowed beneath a maple tree whose leaves had begun turning deep crimson. I cocked my head as a breath whooshed out of me. Maxwell? Seraphina's Pove. Maxwell stepped out into the light, surprise flickering over his features before it melted into a warm, familiar smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes and softened the sharpness of his posture. Well, I'll be damned, he said, stepping forward. Seraphina Blackthorn. I blinked at him. I didn't expect to see you here. He chuckled. Likewise. Maya mentioned that you traveled, but I never in a million years thought this would be your destination. I shrugged. Self-discovery and whatnot. I heard this place has every answer to any question a werewolf could ever ask. Maxwell nodded. You heard right. So what brings you here? He shrugged. I have some business to take care of in the area, though you're a far nicer surprise. That tugged a smile out of me. Then I glanced behind him, bracing out of instinct. Are the twins with you? Gods, no, he shook his head. Can you imagine if I brought them here? They'd destroy hundreds of years of history in one afternoon. I snorted. Smart choice. He spread his arms in a grand gesture toward our surroundings. Welcome to the New Moon Institute. Need a guide? I arched a brow. You're that familiar with this place? His smile turned a little wistful. Yeah, I am actually. Part of me hesitated. After all, I came here to find who I was outside of the influence of my old life. But I had to admit it was nice to see a familiar face. And I realized accepting a tour wouldn't compromise my quest for self-discovery, and I did need help getting my bearings. So I nodded. Sure, why not? Maxwell motioned for me to walk with him, and we fell into an easy stride along the cobblestone path. The energy of the town wrapped around me. It was different here. Not like Seattle's coastal bustle or LA's constant pulsing chaos. Here, everything felt grounded, intentional, soft around the edges. People strolled, not rushed. Students debated passionately on benches. Professors sipped tea outside cafes, overflowing with books instead of electronics. Everyone's eyes seemed lit from within, with curiosity, wonder, purpose. The air tingled with it. Maxwell glanced at my expression and smirked. Feels different, huh? It does, I admitted, unable to keep the awe out of my voice. Feels like the whole world is sleeping, and these are the only people awake. He hummed. That's the New Moon Institute for you. Willow used to say this place was for people bold enough to look behind the veil. I tilted my head. Willow? The name rang a faint, distant bell. Where had I heard it before? For the briefest moment, something flickered across his face. Nostalgia, fondness, pain. He didn't elaborate right away. Instead, he pointed ahead. Come on. Before you get too philosophical, you need to try the best ice cream on this side of the mountains. He wasn't exaggerating. The ice cream parlor was a tiny little space tucked between a bookstore and a plant shop. The fact that it wasn't a nationwide franchise was criminal. Oh, I moaned after my first bite of lavender honey ice cream. This is phenomenal. Daniel would love this. Of course he would. Maxwell laughed softly. Kid has taste. I nodded, shoving another spoonful in my mouth. He'd devour an entire tub. Bring him here next time, Maxwell said. My treat, I laughed. The twins might get jealous. Are you kidding me? I don't know what voodoo Daniel did on them at his birthday, but now they worship the ground he walks on. It's always Daniel this, Daniel that. A relieved laugh spilled out of me. What can I say? My baby has a way with people. Maxwell chuckled. He definitely has a way with my boys, and that innate talent for relating with people is going to make him quite the alpha. Pride unfurled inside me, warm and fierce. Yeah, he's going to be something. We drifted from topic to topic, how Daniel was adapting after the ceremony, how the twins were proudly calling themselves Daniel's loyal lieutenants, how they'd recently built a makeshift hockey rink in the backyard and nearly broke a window. After ice cream, we tossed our cups in the bin outside and drifted back onto the cobblestone path. The late morning sun filtered through the maple trees, scattering warm light over the old stone buildings. As we walked, Maxwell gestured casually at a few spots, a courtyard where students were gathered around a professor, locked in an animated debate, a tiny cafe with notebooks stacked in the windows, a bridge overlooking a narrow stream that glittered like glass. Correct me if I'm wrong, I said, after he pointed out the best coffee shop on this side of the mountains. But your familiarity with this place seems a little more intimate than usual. Maxwell stopped walking. A shadow crossed his features, and I got the sense that I'd stumbled upon some kind of line I had no business crossing. A long silence passed before he finally exhaled and leaned against the low stone wall separating the walkway from a sweeping view of the valley below. This place, he said at last, gesturing his chin to the town around us, is where it all began. What? Where I met Willow, he said her name like a sigh. My mate, my ex-wife. My breath caught. The pure agony that flashed across his face made something tighten in my chest. It was too familiar, hit too close to home. I said softly, I'm sorry. He shook his head. No need to be. I'm always thinking about Willow at every given time, so... His shoulders lifted in a helpless shrug. I didn't want to pry. Truly I didn't. But there was something in the way he spoke her name, like saying it brought back memories both precious and painful. So gently I asked, what happened? His lips curved into a sad, wistful smile. Well, it's a story. I offered a small smile. I have time. He huffed a little laugh. All right. He leaned back and folded his arms, and his eyes seemed to glaze over, like he was slipping into a memory. Back then, he began, I had just taken over some of my beta responsibilities. One of them was overseeing freight shipments that passed through the Institute. And on my third week, my transport crew messed up. Badly. They damaged a crate of archaeological equipment belonging to one of the Institute's research teams. Oof, exactly. And guess who was put in charge of that equipment? Willow? Willow, he confirmed, his lips twitching. She stormed into my temporary office like a literal force of nature, this tiny scholar with ink on her sleeves and murder in her eyes. I snorted. Sounds terrifying. Oh, she was. He finally let the smile unfurl, and that, of course, is the exact moment the mate bond snapped into place. My eyes widened. During a confrontation? During a verbal assault, he corrected. I swear to the goddess, she nearly ripped my spine out through my throat while lecturing me about cultural preservation. The story was funny, but instead of mirth, a cold twinge of envy spread in my chest. Was I jealous that people like Lucian and Maxwell had such dramatic, world-altering encounters with their mates? Maybe. But I pushed the green-eyed monster aside and asked, did the bond mellow her at all? Oh, hell no, Maxwell chuckled. Not even a little. I had to work with her team to fix my team's mistake, and everyone else immediately took me in like a stray puppy. Willow? Definitely a cat person. I snorted. It was torture, he continued with a wistful smile. Beautiful torture, but torture nonetheless. He went on describing how he practically became an unpaid intern, repairing equipment, hauling crates, helping rebuild broken dig sites, even calling in personal favors to replace items that had been damaged beyond repair. And yet Willow remained steadfastly unimpressed. She had such a gentle name, Maxwell murmured, eyes softening, but she was indomitable, sharp, logical, brave. She challenged me in ways no one ever had. His voice turned quieter. I admired her long before she ever returned a single ounce of affection. My heart tightened. So when did she finally come around? He smiled faintly. The day I was supposed to return home, my alpha summoned me back, and I went to say goodbye to the team, and one of the research students slipped and got dragged into the rapids. My stomach flipped. Oh gods. I jumped in, he said simply. Didn't think. Just moved. And you saved them? Barely. His jaw tightened. I nearly drowned in the process. I woke up coughing on the riverbank with Willow screaming at me for risking my life, for scaring her, for attempting to leave without letting her say anything. He paused, breath catching on the memory. She kissed me before I could even sit up properly, then admitted she had fallen in love with me, that she hadn't acknowledged the bond because she believed in making decisions based on her own agency, with or without the bond. My chest warmed. That must have been the happiest moment of my life, he said softly. Nothing else comes close. Several seconds passed in silence. My mind swirled around his story. Willow had fallen in love with him of her own accord, not letting the bond influence her heart. And yet, then gently I asked, if you loved each other so deeply, why did you divorce? Maxwell's smile faltered. Pain flickered behind his eyes, quiet, old, but still there. He looked down at his hands, then out at the mountains, and when he spoke, his voice was a low, steady ache. That, he said, is a longer story. Seraphina's Pov. After that cryptic reply, Maxwell didn't say anything else. He just stood there, hands braced on the stone ledge, eyes fixed on the jagged horizon, where the mountains tore open the sky. A slight wind tugged at his jacket, ruffling his dark hair, carrying the faint scent of sandalwood and a hint of amber. Silence stretched long enough that guilt pricked the back of my throat. I shouldn't have asked. I'd pushed too far, too fast. His story was intimate, vulnerable, something he hadn't owed me at all. I, of all people, knew what a sore spot the topic of relationships was. I'm sorry, I started quietly. You don't have to. No, he said, cutting me off gently. He straightened, exhaling a long breath that seemed to deflate something inside him. You asked a fair question. I stayed quiet, giving him the space he needed. Maxwell rubbed the back of his neck, eyes flicking skyward. Romance is easy, he began. Intoxicating. It sweeps you up, makes you feel bulletproof, invincible. His mouth twisted into a wry, almost weary smile. But marriage? Marriage is a different beast entirely. I blinked. The shift in tone, reflective, edged with old hurt, made something in me perk up, attentive. All Willow's reservations evaporated once we got together, he continued. We were in love, deeply, passionately, recklessly, and for a while that was enough, until it wasn't. A knot formed in my stomach. His eyes dimmed with the weight of memory. We weren't prepared for the world, for responsibilities, for parenthood. My breath hitched. His implication was loud and clear. The twins were just like Daniel. Miracles, yes. Blessings, definitely. But unexpected, unplanned. Maxwell gave a humorless laugh. We told ourselves we were ready. We believed that if we loved each other enough, everything else would fall into place. I was naive. I figured I could balance beta duties, pack responsibilities, then come home and be the perfect partner and father. His jaw flexed. I promised Willow we would be happy. I proposed with every ounce of confidence a young idiot could possibly have. My heart sank gently, a slow descent in tandem with the inevitable downward spiral to come. Our matching was destiny, he murmured. A bond forged by our souls, fate. He shrugged one shoulder, and for a while it did feel that way. Our marriage was blissful, beautiful, perfect. He paused. But life doesn't freeze in that perfect moment. I swallowed hard. What changed? Maxwell opened his mouth and his phone rang. A sharp, brisk sound that cut clean through the moment, slightly startling me. He grimaced and checked the screen. Alpha Collister, he muttered. Sorry, I have to take this. He answered with a professional tone I wasn't used to hearing from him. I stepped aside politely, not intending to eavesdrop, but it wasn't hard to guess the content from the clipped yes, sirs, and understoods. Work, duty, responsibilities that didn't pause for heartbreak. When Maxwell hung up, the softness had drained from his face, replaced by beta sharpness. I have to go, he said, apologetic. My task here can't wait. My disappointment surprised me, but I masked it with a small nod. Right, of course. I've already taken up so much of your time. He hesitated. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say more, to finish the story, to give context, to reassure me that not all mate bonds crumble under pressure. Instead, he just offered a gentle smile and tucked his hands into his pockets. Take care, Sarah, and if you need anything while you're here, just give me a call. I will, I whispered. He gave a slight bow of his head, then strode away, boots crunching against the gravel path. I watched him go until he disappeared behind a stand of more crimson-leaved maples. The breeze picked up, chilling the skin at the nape of my neck, and suddenly the space he left behind felt strangely heavy. So even fated mates, those blessed by the moon goddess, those whose love stories began with lightning and destiny, could break apart, could love deeply and still fall out of rhythm, could share everything and still fracture under the weight of real life. Maxwell and Willow had loved fiercely. They'd been destined. And yet, the ache of the bond in my chest didn't care about boundaries or timing. It pulsed anyway, quiet, stubborn, inescapable. What if Kieran and I had known the truth 10 years ago? What if we'd recognized the mate bond the night it mattered most? What if Celeste hadn't stood between us? What if we hadn't built a decade of resentment before we ever learned what we meant to each other? Would things really have been different? Would fate have saved us from ourselves? Or would we have ended up just like we are now? Just like Maxwell and Willow, two people united by destiny but unraveled by circumstance. My stomach twisted. I shoved the thought away. I couldn't handle it. Not now. Not when I'd barely begun figuring out how I felt, who I was, what I wanted. As if sensing the need for distraction, my phone buzzed. A new email notification lit the screen. New Moon Institute library access approved. My breath left me in a soft, relieved rush. Good. Perfect. Something to focus on. Something that wasn't tangled with the bond or marriage or the echoes of kisses that still burned beneath my skin. The research library at the Institute had been described to me as the most comprehensive collection of supernatural knowledge on the continent, more complete than the Frostbane archives. Definitely less restricted, less filtered, less tainted by family politics and centuries of gatekeeping. If answers existed anywhere, they existed here. I tucked my phone into my pocket and headed toward the towering building on the far edge of campus. The closer I got, the quieter the world became. Conversations softened, footsteps slowed. The air thickened with a kind of reverence, like stepping into a church or temple. The library was enormous, built of stone and glass, with high arched windows that caught the mountain light. Vines clung to the lower walls, and ancient wolf sigils were etched subtly into the stone near the entrance, their lines worn smooth by time. I paused at the foot of the stairs. My pulse fluttered, a mix of anticipation and nerves. "Here goes nothing," I murmured. Alina hummed deep inside me, a warm, steady note of encouragement. I climbed the steps and pushed open the heavy doors, Serafina's Pove. The Frostbane Library had always been solemn and dignified, impressive in its own rigid, aristocratic way. The New Moon Institute's library, colloquially referred to as the Hall of Memories, felt like stepping into a world conjured straight out of a movie, a magical one. The moment I crossed through the archway, my breath caught. Soft light spilled from shimmering glass panels embedded in the ceiling, shifting like slow-moving constellations. Shelves towered upward, carved from dark wood etched with flowing script that glimmered when the light touched them. Floating platforms carrying stacks of books drifted between levels, moving as if weightless. Pages rustled quietly, though no one nearby touched a thing. The entire library, its tomes and volumes, seemed alive. For a moment, I simply stood, awed by its quiet majesty. No wonder scholars worshipped this place. It felt sacred. I wandered deeper, each corridor opening into another maze of shelves. Some held books so old they were bound with metal clasps. Others held sleek, freshly printed journals organized with glowing tags. Wolves, witches, humans, all of it was represented, a tapestry of the natural and supernatural world. Finding the section I needed, however, was less magical. It took nearly half an hour, 3 wrong turns and one kind archivist pointing me toward the Wolf Physiology Advanced Studies wing before I finally reached the shelves. My excitement dimmed quickly. Most of the volumes lined up neatly in front of me were painfully familiar. The Frostbane Library, despite its obsession with secrecy and hierarchy, had collected the same texts. Some were even earlier editions. I sifted through the shelves anyway, stubbornly undeterred. A few minutes passed before a handful of unfamiliar spines caught my eye. I reached for the first one. It was hefty and old, the leather worn along the edges. A faint scent of dust and parchment rose as I opened it. On the inside cover, a list of borrowing records was written in elegant handwriting. My eyes skimmed down the list and froze. Edward Lockwood. The name stared back at me like a ghost resurrected. Slowly, almost mechanically, I reached for the next unfamiliar book. My pulse stuttered. His name again, then the next, and the next. My heart thudded unevenly. My father had come here. He'd searched the same volumes I now pored over. What were you looking for, Father? What did you hope to find here? What did you already know? My hands were trembling as I moved to the terminal at the end of the row, where a tall touchscreen column that allowed readers to search borrowing histories by name, topic, or date was fixed to the wall. I hesitated, then typed in his name. A list materialized, long enough that I had to scroll several times. At first glance, the topics looked scattered. Some concerned wolf genetics. Others were about recessive traits. A few referenced bloodlines, shifting anomalies, suppressed instincts. Individually, each topic felt clinical, almost random, but together, a faint, unmistakable pattern emerged. Genetics, heredity, suppression. My fingertips pressed harder against the screen. It felt like a cold hand was closing around my throat. My father, emotionally absent, dismissive, disdainful, steeped in tradition and pride, had come here for something that touched all the questions I had been terrified to ask about myself. Did he already know? About my wolf? About what I lacked? What I was becoming? Speculation spiraled through my mind like a tornado. My mother's words were like debris picked up by the storm. Among your siblings, you were destined to live an ordinary life, mundane, unremarkable. You're just like everyone else, worse if anything. Please let her be spared. I forced myself to breathe, blinked furiously until my blurry vision steadied, focused on the task at hand. When I reached the end of the borrowing list, I expected more book titles. Instead, a row of redacted entries. Nothing but black bars where titles should have been. Only dates remained, 3 to be precise. And on each date, the same location was listed, Origins Archives Room. I frowned. I hadn't seen anything with that name on the directory map at the entrance. And the Hall of Memories, vast as it was, certainly didn't have any obvious door labeled Origins Archives. Curiosity and unease twisted together inside me. I had to find it. I scoured the Hall of Memories from end to end, every wing, every staircase, every alcove, nothing. And when I started asking around, the responses were strange. A junior archivist blinked at me, confused. "I've never heard of that room." A researcher frowned thoughtfully. "Pretty sure that's just a myth. Bunch of old scholars made it up to feel better about themselves when they couldn't find what they were looking for." He shrugged. "Better that the knowledge is restricted than it doesn't exist." Two others exchanged glances before muttering something about old legends. Finally, I was directed to a professor-level scholar hunched over a thick encyclopedia. Irritation flashed across his face when I interrupted him with my inquiry, but he didn't dismiss me immediately. Instead, he peered over the rim of his round, wire-framed spectacles, the lenses catching the library's enchanted ceiling light in a way that made his eyes look almost silver. "And what exactly," he said, voice thin and papery, "are you looking for?" My grip tightened around my bag strap. "Just researching." His stark white eyebrows arched as he gave me a slow, evaluating once-over, like he was appraising a misfiled document rather than a person. His nostrils flared delicately, as if he were smelling a lie. "What kind of research?" "Personal interest," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He leaned closer, curiosity flickered in his eyes. "People don't ask about rooms like that on a whim." He lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Why are you looking for it?" I hesitated. His gaze was too sharp, too perceptive to brush off easily, and I needed something, anything, that could push me closer to answers. So I gave him the vaguest truth I could. "My shifting has complications. I'm trying to understand it better." He must have noticed it then, the lack of aura around me, the incomplete signature of a wolf who should have shifted long ago. His face hardened instantly. "Oh," he said, leaning back as if my situation was contagious. His lips pursed, thin and pale. "And I suppose you're looking for a miraculous explanation the Hall of Memories can't give you." My jaw twitched. "Let me be clear," he continued, tone dripping with superiority. "The so-called Origins Archives, if it exists, is not a place for an incompletely transitioned wolf to inquire about." He adjusted his spectacles with a sniff. "You should stick to the accessible sections. They're more appropriate for someone in your situation." Heat rose beneath my skin, anger, humiliation, and an old, familiar sting I thought I'd left behind in Frostbane territory. I forced myself to inhale slowly through my nose, steadying the breath. Fine. It was a stumbling block, a setback. I was used to those. They never deterred me. If the scholars wouldn't help, I knew someone who might. Later that evening, when I was all settled in my rented lodging, I called Maxwell. He listened attentively as I explained everything without divulging too many details. "Origins Archives room," he murmured when I was done. "I've never heard of it either." Disappointment sank in my stomach. Then he added, "But if such a place exists, there's only one person who would know." "Who?" I asked, hope rising. "The Institute's director," Maxwell replied. "Director Alois. He was Willow's mentor, and she spoke highly of him, said he was brilliant and kind, but she mentioned that he became reclusive around 3 years ago." "Reclusive," I echoed. "Doesn't attend public lectures anymore, rarely makes appearances, mostly communicates through his assistant these days." "Okay, so can I meet up with his assistant?" Maxwell hesitated. "Lionel, he's a handful." I didn't even want to imagine what a handful meant coming from the man who raised Noah and Zach, but at least I had a lead. Alice Lionel, the Origins Archives room. Answers existed. Hidden, maybe. Guarded, definitely, but not unreachable. Seraphina's Povey. The director's office looked nothing like I'd imagined. For someone reputed to be a genius, a visionary, the quiet architect of the Institute's most advanced research, I expected something grand. Vaulted ceilings, ancient tomes, maybe a glowing crystal wolf statue in the corner for dramatic effect. Instead, the office was mundane. A narrow hallway with polished floors, a plain wooden door with a brass nameplate, a potted fern that had seen better days. And Lionel. The director's assistant was tall and sharply put together, with neatly parted brown hair and round gold-rimmed glasses that made him look permanently judgmental. He spotted me the moment I stepped into the entryway. His hazel eyes flicked over me with quick, appraising precision, the kind that made it clear he'd already decided exactly who and what I was before I'd even spoken. "Welcome," he said in a flat tone. Do you have an appointment with Director Alois? I shook my head. No, actually, but I was hoping to speak with him. Name? He interrupted, a pen already poised above a clipboard. Seraphina Blackthorne. He blinked. His entire posture shifted, straightening like someone had tugged an invisible string attached to his spine. Blackthorne, he repeated, reverence seeping into his voice. As in Kieran Blackthorne, Alpha of the Nightfang Pack? I cleared my throat, ignoring the pang that shot through me at the mention of Kieran. Well, yes, but... Wow, Lionel gushed, his eyes brightening with awe. It's truly an honor to meet you, Luna Blackthorne. Shit, actually, I don't answer to that title. And heat crept up the back of my neck. Kieran and I are divorced. Something cold flickered behind his eyes. And your affiliation with Nightfang? I pursed my lips. Dissolved. The transformation was instantaneous. Interest extinguished. Respect evaporated. The polite smile thinned into something disdainful. A packless divorcee, he murmured as if diagnosing a terminal condition. Well, that's unfortunate. My fingers curled at my sides. Does that affect whether I can speak with the director? It affects everything, he said, the sweetness in his tone dissolving into vinegar. Director Alois does not meet with unscheduled visitors, especially not. He eyed me like he was trying to figure out what fungal species I was. Outsiders. I'm not an outsider, I said evenly. I might not be affiliated with a pack, but I'm affiliated with Out of the Shadows organization. I'm visiting the Institute on a personal recommendation from Alpha Lucian Reed. Lionel laughed, actually threw his head back and guffawed. Oh, you mean Lucian Reed's pet project? He drawled. Yes, I'm aware of it. A glorified charity center for strays and defects. Very noble, very sentimental, very feudal. I gritted my teeth. Excuse me? Lionel lifted his chin, warming to his own arrogance. Bloodline determines a wolf's worth from birth, not whatever little rehabilitation program Reed is running. Dress up a mutt as much as you want, but it will never stand up to a purebred. Alina snapped to attention inside me, hackles rising. Let me at him. I'll show him what a mutt is. I was very tempted to let Alina's ire run free and smack the condescending smirk off Lionel's bird-like face. But I held back. My hands tightened until my knuckles ached. Your opinions are yours, I gritted out. I'm not here for a debate. No, of course not, he said with an exasperated sigh, like I was the one getting on his last nerve. You're here to waste the director's time. You don't know why I'm here. I don't need to, he sniffed. The director's schedule is full. If you want to browse the Institute, by all means, but this office is not for you. Alina growled, a low, lethal hum. Just give me 5 minutes with him. I hated the pleading in my tone. I hated being at the mercy of this dickhead. Absolutely not. Lionel flicked his hand dismissively toward the exit. Good day, Miss Blackthorne. His nose wrinkled. You should consider reverting to your maiden name. Deceitfully parading such a noble name around can be considered fraud. I inhaled sharply through my nose. I was going to ram his clipboard straight into his pompous skull. I opened my mouth, ready to deliver the kind of scathing verbal blow Maya would have applauded. Lionel, a soft voice drifted from the back room. Lionel turned towards the sound. Director Alois, sir? Were we too loud? Did we interrupt your work? But Director Alois paid no mind to Lionel as he stepped out from behind the door. Although a little smaller than I expected, he looked exactly like I imagined. Like someone who'd spent most of his life buried in research, slightly hunched, sleeves smudged with ink, expression worn but alert. His eyes, clear, pale amber, sharp like the soft sag of age, landed on my face with startling intensity, and something in them lit up, like recognition. Oh, he murmured, so the visitor I was expecting has finally arrived. My pulse stumbled. Lionel sputtered, Sir, she came without an appointment. Surely she isn't who? Alois lifted one thin, wrinkled hand. Lionel fell silent immediately. The director studied me for a long, unsettling moment, not like I was a puzzle or anomaly, more like someone remembering. Oh, the resemblance is uncanny, he murmured. I blinked. What? Edward Lockwood's daughter, correct? My breath caught so sharply it hurt. Lionel stiffened, his eyes widening. What? He turned his panicked gaze to his boss. Sir, I had no idea. I would have... Leave us, the director said gently, his attention never wavering from me. But sir, now Lionel. The arrogant assistant deflated, bowed stiffly, and vanished down the corridor without looking at me. I managed to find my voice. "How did you?" Alois's lips pulled into a faint smile. "Come, walk with me." Without waiting for a reaction, he turned and moved toward a set of glass doors leading outside. I followed. The garden below the director's office was nothing like the manicured lawns of the Lockwood estate or the structured training grounds of Nightfang. It was wild. Greenery spilling over stone paths, vines curling lazily around archways, beds of herbs and flowers planted in no discernible pattern, yet somehow forming a cohesive whole. Birds chattered in the canopy overhead, and a small fountain gurgled quietly near a cluster of benches. Alois strolled, hands clasped behind him, as if he had his whole life to take this walk. The morning light caught in his silver-streaked hair and the fine creases at the corners of his eyes. "You have questions," he said. "Dozens, hundreds, all clamoring beneath my ribs, demanding attention. My father," my voice was thin. "Did you know him?" Alois hummed. "In my own way." "What is that even?" He raised a finger, stopping me mid-sentence without even looking at me. "Look at the buildings," he said. I blinked. "Sorry?" He gestured lightly to the institute grounds surrounding us, the sweeping roof lines, the carved stonework, the ancient sigils embedded in the archways. "What do you see?" he asked. I frowned, caught off balance by the shift. "They're beautiful. And, what else?" I hesitated. I came here to ask questions. Why was I the one being interrogated? But Alois had the patience of a man sure he would live forever. Something told me I couldn't rush this encounter, so I let my honest reply tumble out. "They feel intentional, personal. Whoever built this place put a piece of themselves in it. They wanted everyone who visited to do the same. They wanted it to feel alive." Alois's smile deepened, soft and knowing. "You have Edward's eyes," he said, "but young Margaret's zeal." My stomach dropped straight through the earth. He didn't just know my father. He knew both my parents. It was like every step I took closer to the truth only tangled me further in a history that ran deeper than I'd realized. "What? How? Why did my father come here?" I demanded, unable to hold back the dam of questions any longer. What was he researching? What is the Origins Archives room? Why were his records redacted? What did he... Alois held up a hand again. The questions died in my throat. His gaze softened, gentle but threaded with something weary. "You will not find the answers you seek in the Hall of Memories," he murmured. "Seraphina's povee." Ava didn't resist when I asked her to lead the way. I followed behind her as she walked, quick and small and silent, her shoulders hunched like she was bracing to be struck from behind at any moment. Moonlight Alley grew narrower the farther we went. The lanterns thinned. The shops disappeared. Cracks split the pavement in jagged lines, and the buildings sagged under the weight of years and neglect. The scent of damp stone and stale air clung to everything. Ava stopped in front of a crooked wooden door beneath a rusted staircase. "This is it," she muttered. When she pushed open the door, a wave of sour, sickly air drifted out. Sweat, herbal poultices, and the unmistakable scent of fever. A frail cough rasped from inside. Ava's chin quivered before she masked it with defiance and stepped in. "Grandma? I brought someone." I don't think her grandmother cared or even heard what she'd said. The old woman lay on a lumpy mattress on the floor of an otherwise empty room, damp gray hair plastered to her sweaty forehead, breath shallow and uneven. Ava knelt beside her, smoothing the thin blankets with small, shaking hands. "She gets worse at night," she whispered, voice cracking at the edges. "Sometimes she can't breathe right." My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a mild illness, it was dangerous, and this young child was carrying the burden alone. I pulled out my phone. "We're calling a doctor." Ava's head snapped up, alarm flashing in her eyes. "We can't afford one." "I can." She stared at me like I'd announced the moon was moving into her kitchen. "Why? You don't even know us." The world would be a pretty awful place if people only helped those they knew. Before she could argue, Maxwell picked up on the second ring. "Maxwell, I need your help," I said without preamble. "Sarah?" His voice sharpened at the strain in mine. "What happened?" "There's a girl, Ava, and her grandmother is seriously ill. She needs medical attention immediately. They live in Moonlight Alley." A soft curse slipped down the line. "Moonlight Alley? What are you doing there?" "That's not important, Maxwell. Can you help me or not?" He sighed. Send me your location. I can't come myself, but I'll get a doctor there in 15 minutes. I sagged with relief. Thank you. True to his word. 15 minutes later, a physician arrived with 2 apprentices. There didn't need to be much by way of an exchange. Their assignment here was clear. Ava hovered anxiously, clutching her grandmother's hand as the doctor examined her. The diagnosis was quick and grim, severe pneumonia compounded by malnutrition and exhaustion, but treatable. They gave her injections, started her on fluids, and moved her to a small medical lodging Maxwell had arranged. It was clean, bright, and warm, a place where she could heal. Ava watched every step with wide, trembling eyes. When the doctor said her grandmother would recover with proper care, Ava slumped, as if a string that had been pulled too tight for too long had finally snapped. She wiped her eyes quickly with the heel of her palm, pretending she wasn't crying. "Thank you," she mumbled. "You don't have to thank." "No," she said sharply, cutting me off. "I do." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a scrap of paper and a stub of pencil, scribbled something quickly, then shoved it toward me. "Grandma's number," she said, "so we can keep in touch and I can pay you back." I blinked at the grown-up child before me. "Ava, I'll pay you back." She pressed the paper into my hand, stubborn. "Just give me time. Once I have money." "Stolen money?" I teased gently. Her cheeks flushed, her gaze darted away. "I don't like to steal. She kicked at a loose tile with the toe of her shoe. "I've never been to school. I don't have any skills. No one ever taught me how to earn money the right way." Something inside me softened. I bent slightly. "Question. Did you make those traps yourself?" "You mean the ones you ninja'd your way out of?" I couldn't help but smile. "The very same." She shrugged. "Yeah. Then I think I can argue that you do have skills. Brilliant ones." I reached out and ruffled her hair. She flinched at first, and I thought she might pull away, but then she leaned into my hand just a little. "And if you ever want to learn anything else," I said softly, "I'll help you. I'll call your grandma's number so you can have mine, and you can reach out anytime. I'll make sure you get schooling, training, whatever you need." Her head lifted. Her eyes were a mixture of suspicion and something heart-wrenching. "Why?" she whispered. "What?" "You paid the doctor a lot of money to take care of my grandma and to keep checking up on her, and now this. Why are you being nice to me?" she demanded, voice shaking. "Do you want something? Do you expect me to work for you later?" She stumbled a step back, panic flaring in her eyes. I'm not going to be anyone's slave." It was one thing to hear the teenage Omega in the alley say similar words, but hearing it from someone so little, someone whose innocence had been snatched away by life's cruel hand, it stabbed something deep in me. I crouched down to look her in the eye. "Ava, no, I don't want anything." I gently put my hands on her thin shoulders. "I'm helping you because it's the right thing to do, and you remind me a little of myself." She scowled. "I'm not rich or pretty or tall or—" "Not like that," I said, smiling despite everything. "I might not have had to steal on the streets to survive, but I know what it's like to feel alone in the world, to be overlooked, dismissed, told what you're not instead of what you could be." Ava's lip wobbled. "And," I added softly, "because I'm a mother, I can't walk away from a child who's suffering." Silence stretched. She swallowed hard. "I'll think about the school thing," she muttered. "After Grandma gets better, I'm not leaving her." "Good," I said. "That's a good plan." Outside the clinic window, the sky was lighting up. Dawn was approaching. My heart stuttered. I had spent the whole night with Ava and her grandmother. My side quest had taken over my main goal. Alois, the talisman. Shit. I straightened. I need to go. Ava followed me out the door. She looked uncertain, biting her lip as if debating something. "I don't have anything to give you, to thank you," she said, voice small. "I don't need anything," I assured her. But she shook her head. "Grandma always says, even if you have nothing, you can still give something." She took my hand. Her small fingers were cool, a little rough. She closed her eyes, concentrating hard. Then she pulled out a stub of charcoal from the pocket of her frayed shorts and rubbed it between her fingers. With careful strokes, she drew a symbol on the inside of my arm. Although a little clumsy, the lines were intricate, forming a shape I didn't recognize. A soft warmth spread from her touch, tingling faintly beneath my hand. "There," she said, pulling back. "A blessing. Grandma taught me when I was little. Emotion caught me off guard as I stared at the pattern. Ava, it's beautiful. She shrugged one shoulder, embarrassed. It'll have to do for now, till I can pay you back properly. I smiled. You don't owe me anything. She shook her head. I owe you everything. We exchanged a small, wordless farewell. Then I ran. By the time I reached the director's garden, the horizon was a pale wash of gold and lavender. Dawn edged upward, slow but unavoidable. Alois was already there. He stood with his hands clasped behind him, watching the sunrise as if greeting an old friend. He didn't turn when I walked up, but he spoke as soon as my foot touched the gravel path. You cut it close, I grimaced, breathless. I know, I'm sorry. The talisman, he asked mildly. My heart sank. I straightened, running a hand through my hair. I failed. I didn't have time to even. Show me your hand. I frowned, my hand freezing in my hair. My hand? He nodded. Slowly, I untangled my fingers from my hair and extended my right hand. Alois's gaze dropped to the faint symbol drawn on my skin. The mark pulsed softly as the light rose. The director's smile bloomed, slow and full of approval. You found it. My breath caught. What? No, this isn't. I frowned down at the drawing. This was just a little girl I helped. She gave me a blessing. A talisman, Alois corrected. The Moonlight Alley talisman exists only in the hands of its true keepers. It cannot be bought or bartered, only earned. My mind spun. And the only way to earn it, Alois continued, is to show kindness freely, to help without expecting anything in return, to protect the vulnerable. He looked at me then, and his pale, ancient eyes softened. You have passed my test, Serafina. Warmth spread in my chest, the reality of his words making me dizzy. But Alois wasn't finished. There is but one more obstacle, he said, and my stomach dropped. Lovely, yet another barrier. The Origin Archives room has a gatekeeper, Elias, a brilliant man, loyal, unyielding, and unfortunately, his sigh was weary, deeply prejudiced. He's half human and has always held a bias against purebred wolves. My stomach tightened. It was almost comical that I was prejudiced according to whatever bias was convenient. If I stood in front of a low-born wolf, they sneered at me for being alpha-born. If I stood in front of a purebred, they looked down on me for not being complete. So he might reject me. He has the right to deny anyone entry, Alois said. A cold breath of apprehension slipped down my spine. So what do? I whispered. Alois smiled. That, he said, depends entirely on your fortune. I looked at my hand again, at the tiny talisman Ava had drawn, glowing faintly in the newborn sunlight. Well then, here's hoping I still had some of that cosmic luck. Serafina's Pove. In addition to the cryptic warning about the gatekeeper who might very well turn me away, the only other thing Alois had told me about the Origins Archives room was where to find it. Not inside any building. Not beneath the Hall of Memories like I'd suspected. Behind the Institute, he'd said, tapping a map with his knuckle. On the rear mountain, look for the ancient tree. You'll know it when you see it. So I knew exactly where I was going. But knowing where and knowing what waited there were two entirely different things. The path behind the Research Institute sloped upward into the mountain, narrowing the farther I walked. What began as a neat gravel trail soon dissolved into uneven stone and tangled roots, the trees growing older, thicker, twisted with age. The air itself felt heavier here, quiet but not empty, expectant, like a held breath. It wasn't until I reached a small ridge that I finally saw it. A tree, if it could still be called that. Its trunk was gargantuan, easily wide enough for 10 men to wrap their arms around. Its bark was silvery black, ridged like ancient armor, and its roots sank deep into the mountain stone. Its canopy stretched so far and high that it eclipsed the sky. The leaves shimmered faintly in the morning light, as if brushed with stardust. A hollow yawned at its base, dark, round, deep enough that the sunlight did not reach inside. My breath caught. This was no doorway carved by hand, no architectural marvel or engineered seal. This was nature shaped by old-world magic, opening its ribs to reveal a hidden heart. And beside it stood a small wooden cabin. Smoke curled from the chimney. A chopping block sat near the door, an axe embedded in the wood. Beneath the eaves hung strings of dried herbs, talismans, and wind chimes made of bone and stone. And sitting on the porch was a man, Elias. He looked younger than I expected, maybe late 30s or early 40s, but there was something old behind his eyes. His hair was dark, cut short, streaked with soot or ash, and his features were sharp but worn. Scarred hands rested on his knees as he watched me approach. There was no warmth or curiosity in his gaze, only an unyielding wall of indifference. When I reached the bottom step, he didn't bother standing. "What do you want?" he asked flatly, his voice like gravel. I swallowed, straightening. "My name is Serafina. I'm here with Director Alois's permission. I seek entry to the Origins Archives room." He snorted. "Permission?" He waved a hand like he was swatting away a mosquito. "I don't care if the moon goddess herself granted you permission. Turn around. Go back." "I'm not here for vanity or curiosity," I insisted. "I'm seeking answers." He stood abruptly, and I instantly noticed the uneven shift of his weight. His left leg was a polished metal prosthetic, attached just above the knee, the leather straps worn but meticulously maintained. He jabbed a finger at me. "Every arrogant young master and lady who comes up here says the same thing. I'm different. My purpose is noble. My question is important. I've heard it all." He turned away, muttering, "The Origin Archives are not a playground for entitled purebreds who think the world owes them revelations." Heat prickled at my cheeks. "I'm not." But he was already limping back toward his cabin door. "This place is not for the likes of you," he snapped without looking back. "Go home." The door slammed shut before I could speak again. I stood there, stunned, exasperated, and angry in equal measure. A scream clawed its way up my throat. Every obstacle, every dead end, every smug dismissal I'd faced since arriving had built up like pressure behind my ribs. Now, with the Origin Archives finally within reach, of course, there was yet another barrier in my way. Alina's presence wrapped around me, warm and steady, easing the spike of ire. "Do not let frustration overwhelm you," she whispered. "He is only doing what he believes he must." I pursed my lips together, breathed through my nose. "So what do I do?" I murmured. "What you must." A wry smile pulled on my lips. "Look at you, jumping on the cryptic train." Her amusement soothed me a little more. I looked around. I had no idea what I sought, but when I saw it. Near the cabin, half hidden by tall grasses, was a small grave marked by a simple stone. The carving was weathered with age, but the name was still visible. Teresa. Something inside me softened instantly. Loss lived here, old, quiet, heavy, and Elias carried it like armor. I wondered if that was why he guarded the archives so fiercely. Something deep in my bones pulled me towards the grave. It had nothing to do with me or my quest. If anything, Elias might find it disrespectful and add my bones to his collection of wind chimes. Knowing all that, I still moved, each step slow and reverent. Next thing I knew, I was sinking one knee into the earth before the stone. I placed a hand over my heart, bowed my head. Right next to my knee, a small wildflower grew, pale purple, delicate. I plucked it gently and laid it at the grave's base, then whispered the Lockwood ritual blessing. "May your spirit walk unburdened. May your name be held by the earth and remembered by the sky." The wind shifted, soft, warm, almost grateful. A pang tightened my chest. I'd whispered that prayer last at my father's funeral, and this very moment, this place, thousands of miles away from home, was the first time in a long, long time that I'd felt so close to him. The ache was so visceral that tears gathered in my eyes. I blinked them away furiously as I rose, and felt eyes on me. Elias stood in the cabin doorway again, his expression no longer stone, but something close to startled recognition. "You," he murmured. "That blessing, where did you learn that?" I swallowed. "My family, the Lockwoods." A shadow crossed his face, recognition rippling through his eyes like a stone dropped into still water. "Of course," he whispered. "You're Edward Lockwood's daughter." It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. "Yes." Elias exhaled sharply and braced a hand against the doorframe, as if memory had knocked the air out of him. "Teresa, my sister," he said hoarsely, "was friends with your father." My breath stilled. "She was a mixed blood," he continued, eyes drifting toward the grave, "but brilliant, on the path to becoming the next director of the New Moon Institute." His throat flexed. "Before she was killed protecting this same institute during a raid by rogues." I felt his grief like a physical weight, heavy, humbling. He looked back at me, gaze softening in a way that almost broke my composure. "Edward was the only high-ranking wolf who came up here to honor her every year." I clenched my hands. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't," he said with a bitter half-smile. He kept his past buried to give you a quiet life, an ordinary life. My heart lurched. What do you mean? He shook his head. Even now, I won't be the one to reveal what your father tried so desperately to shield you from. A sharp, helpless frustration punched through me. Elias, please. I'm here because I need answers. I'm here because something is happening to me, something I don't understand. My father came to this place seeking the same truth. I deserve to know what that is. It's my life. He studied me for a long moment, and in his sharp, piercing gaze I saw what he saw. Not status, or inadequacy, or even his bias. Elias saw something else. Fate, burden, maybe echoes of an alpha he once knew. Finally, he spoke. Not just anyone is accepted into the archives. I lifted my chin. I understand. No, he said firmly, limping toward me until he stood only a few feet away. You don't. His moss-green eyes bored into mine. It isn't simply a place to ask questions and receive answers. It tasks you, pierces into your very soul to burn away what it doesn't deem worthy. Not many survive. I gritted my teeth, refusing to let dread take hold. I am my father's daughter. If he survived, so will I. His lips quirked, something like amusement dancing in his eyes. If the archives accept you, you will be granted 3 chances, 3 visits, 3 questions for your entire life. My breath hitched. Only 1 question per visit, he added, no more. That felt impossibly small. My head spun with the sheer mass of everything I wanted to know. What should I ask first? I whispered. That, Elias said quietly, is the first trial. Choose wisely. His gaze softened, barely, and pray your question is one the archives will answer. My pulse thumped, slow and thunderous. He looked toward the ancient tree, its hollow dark and waiting. The wind stirred, lifting my hair. The hollow of the ancient tree seemed to exhale as if waking, watching, waiting. And I realized, the next step wasn't just a door, it was judgment. A test of who I was, and who my father had feared I might become. I inhaled, steadying myself. I'm ready, I said. Elias stepped aside. Then enter, he said softly. But remember, Serafina Lockwood, some answers do not come without a price. Kieran's Pav, my office had never felt so small, so suffocating, so goddamned far from where I needed to be. The moment my phone vibrated with the encrypted alert from my field unit, my lungs cinched tight. I read the message once, twice. The damning words didn't change. Target lost. Trail severed after entering restricted forest perimeter. What do you mean you lost her? I snapped into the comm. Static cracked. Alpha, we followed her as instructed. She crossed the main trail behind the Institute, entered the mountain forest, and then everything cut out. The perimeter is shielded. We can't get drones in. No visuals. No scent trail beyond the first ridge. We're still scanning. Not good enough. I bit out. Expand the radius. Sweep the valley. If you have to tear the mountain apart stone by stone. Alpha, find her. I ended the call and hurled the encrypted comm tablet against the wall. The reinforced casing split with a sharp crack, but refused to break, unlike my composure, which had already shattered beyond repair. Of course, the goddamn New Moon Institute would hide behind protected zones. But shielded terrain? A place so secretive that even my best trackers lost her trail? My jaw ached from how hard I ground my teeth. Even when Sarah crossed paths with human hunters in Seattle, I hadn't panicked like this. Back then, I'd had eyes on her as she spectacularly handed their asses to them. I'd known exactly where she was, exactly how many steps it would take me to reach her if she needed me. But this was blindness. This was silence. This was a fucking void where my mate should have been. And it was unraveling me in ways I didn't know I could unravel. My worst fear coiled low and cold. Something happened to her. Something happened and I wasn't there, and the soft knock on my door almost demolished me. What? I barked. Daniel peeked in, and the knot of anxiety in my chest loosened a fraction. His pajama shirt was crooked, his hair rumpled, and there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead. His little fists were balled so tightly his knuckles were pale. Daddy? His voice was small, and alarm bells rang in my head. He hadn't called me Daddy since he was 4 years old. I had a nightmare. My entire chest split wide. I pushed away from my desk and opened my arms. Come here, bud. He rushed into my embrace. I gathered him onto my lap, arms circling him tight. He shivered in my hold, despite the warmth radiating from him. It was moments like these that reminded me he was just a little baby. I saw Mom, he whispered into my shirt. She was somewhere strange, dark, and she looked hurt. I tried calling her name, but she didn't hear me. His voice trembled. I think something's wrong. We have to go save her. Ashar surged awake within me, restless and wild, his claws scraping desperation into every inch of my being. I wish I could reassure my son that it was just a dream, just a manifestation of his concern for his mother, but that would be a bald-faced lie. Daniel's words were an ice-cold confirmation. He'd always been uncannily clairvoyant, and now he had a nightmare just hours before Sarah's trail went cold. I didn't believe in coincidences. I stroked his hair and pressed my cheek to his temple, unable to tell where my trembling ended and his began. Hey, look at me. Years of alpha training made my voice steady despite the wild rush of panic flooding my veins. He lifted his head, eyes glossy with fear, the same fear I fought to keep from swallowing me whole. I will find her, I promised. I'd sworn to Sarah I'd never leave Daniel's side, but that promise felt hollow now, crumbling under the weight of new developments. Was I overreacting? Gods, I hoped so. I would rather she were safe and was livid at me for coming after her like a restless dog than... Fuck, I didn't want to entertain any alternative. We should go together, Daniel said. No. I shook my head, my firm tone leaving no room for argument. His lower lip quivered and my throat tightened. I know you want to help your mom, bud, but the best thing you can do for her is stay here. But, no buts. You stay with Grandma and Grandpa, you stay safe and sound and wait for me to bring your mom back. Daniel's chin wobbled. His hand, so impossibly small, slipped into mine and squeezed. You promise you'll bring her home? My chest clenched so hard I could barely breathe. I swear to you, I swear on my life, I will bring Sarah home safe. He nodded, fear still flickering in his eyes, but he buried his face in my chest and his trembling eased. He trusted me, and that trust was a weight I bore with every beat of my heart. And I would keep that promise with my last breath. Sarah was somewhere I couldn't reach, somewhere shielded, somewhere tied to that institute and the secrets buried for too long. But I would bring her back, even if it meant tearing the mountain apart stone by stone. Lucian's Poe. The moon has lowered behind the oldest tree. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair as pride rippled through me. She found it. Yes, my informant murmured over the line. She reached the gatekeeper. She gained access. Good, I murmured. Keep your distance, report everything, but do not interfere. Elias won't tolerate shadows near his perimeter. I know, the informant replied. She was allowed to approach. Whether she enters is another matter. A faint smile ghosted across my lips. She will. I had known from the moment Sarah added the New Moon Institute to her itinerary that her search in the Hall of Memories would lead her to the Origins archives. I knew she would pass whatever test was placed before her to gain entry. Zara once dreamed of walking the same path. She had hoped the archives held the answers to the strange strength in her bloodline, to the whispers of power we never understood. She had spent years preparing, but she never made it. That thought burned, scorching through old scars. A breeze stirred outside my window, rattling the panes. I rested my forehead against the glass. Sarah, I murmured, you stubborn, brilliant woman. My spy cleared his throat softly, bringing me back to the conversation. You want to go, don't you? A humorless smile curved my lips. Want has nothing to do with it. Sarah was entering a place that changed people, a place that demanded something of the soul in return for its secrets. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with the fierce certainty that had anchored itself inside me the moment I first realized what she truly was. I had no doubt that she would come out alive. I had no doubt that she would come out changed. And when she did, she would need someone at her side, someone who understood the magnitude of who she was and the power she carried. Seraphina's Pove. The darkness in the hollow beneath the ancient tree held the same vast, endless promise as the night sky, as if it were brimming with secrets, waiting for the first spark of light to unveil them. I hesitated at the threshold, fingertips grazing the rough, silvery bark. My heart pounded a relentless rhythm, each beat echoing with a strange electric recognition that rippled through me. Everything I'd been chasing, every fragment, every half-truth, every door slammed in my face, every fear I'd carried for 30 long years, coiled together in my chest as I stood at the brink of a precipice I had been blindly approaching my whole life. The weight of it all pressed so fiercely against my ribs it threatened to splinter them. Alina's presence curled warm around my thoughts, steady as an anchor in a storm. "Breathe, Sarah." I drew in a slow, deep breath, holding it at the top of my lungs the way Maya had taught me long ago as a centering technique. And then I crossed the threshold. The air shifted in an instant as the world fell away. The Origin Archives room wasn't a room at all. It unfolded into a realm that felt suspended above the fabric of reality. My boots touched no visible ground. Instead, I stood on a floor of faintly glowing starlight, soft and cool and insubstantial as mist. Overhead stretched a sky that couldn't belong to this earth, swirls of violet, indigo, and silver drifting like fluid galaxies. The air thrummed with ancient magic, its low vibration raising goosebumps along my skin. Soft streams of light unfurled around me, weaving themselves into a gently curving path of stars that led deeper into the expanse. I drew a shaky breath. "Okay, that's beautiful," Alina whispered from within me, awed. Beautiful didn't even cover it. As I moved forward, the starry path pulsed beneath my feet, as if acknowledging my arrival. Then a voice, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, seeped into the space around me. "Welcome, Seraphina." The sound wasn't spoken. It resonated inside me, threading through my bones like music. I swallowed hard. "What? Who are you?" A keeper, a witness, the voice of the Origin Archives. My gaze swept the horizon. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Where do I go from here?" A soft pulse of starlight illuminated a distant archway formed purely of shimmering constellations. "To the starlight hallway, if you wish to ask your question." My pulse quickened. This was it. One question for this visit, one chance to pry open the truth. I followed the star path, my footsteps silent yet somehow echoing in the vastness. The archway grew clearer the closer I came, and when I passed beneath it, the world expanded once more. The starlight hallway stole my breath away. Countless stars drifted around me like living embers, each burning with its own hue. Constellations flowed and reformed, shifting into patterns beyond my understanding. At the center, a circular platform glowed brighter than all the rest, a dais sculpted from what seemed to be solidified moonlight. The moment I stepped onto it, the stars stirred. "You have been granted one question," the voice murmured. "Ask." My throat tightened. Standing here, enveloped in cosmic magic, older than any legend, it felt like anything was possible. Can this place truly answer anything I ask? A faint vibration rippled across the hallway, almost like laughter. Not every question has an answer. Some answers do not exist. Some are not permitted. Some would destroy what you hope to save. I clenched my fists. Then, how do I know which one to ask? Which answer do I need the most? That decision is up to you. And be warned, Seraphina, any attempt to deceive, manipulate, or test the hallway will result in immediate revocation of access. A cold shiver crept down my spine. No pressure. My mind spiraled through every question clawing at me. Why did Father come here? What was he researching? What secret had he tried to bury? Why am I like this, broken, incomplete? Why was my wolf silent for so long? Why me? Why my family? Why? It struck me that most of my questions spiraled back to a single point. After all, he'd probably had the same questions. I licked my lips. What was my father investigating? The stars dimmed. A sharp sound like a muffled crack of thunder reverberated through the hallway. Denied. The voice was still calm, but this time it carried weight. The archives do not reveal the lives or secrets of others. You have been warned. I swallowed hard. Right. Not that. I closed my eyes. What did I truly need? What question had haunted me, cutting deep since the day I learned I could not do what every other wolf did so easily? I looked at my trembling hands. My voice came out softer this time. How do I achieve full transformation? Silence. Long and heavy. Then a sigh, gentle, ancient, sorrowful, drifted through the hallway. A wasted opportunity. My breath caught like a slap. What do you mean? The moon goddess has already spoken to you of this. My frustration flared. I didn't even care how the voice knew what had transpired in my dreams. I don't want prophecy or riddles or poetry. Enough with the cryptic bullshit. I want a plain, simple answer. I need to know why I'm incomplete, why part of me is missing. My voice shook. Please. The stars shifted, slowly, softly, Then one detached itself from the rest. A small, pale blue star floated toward me. As it hovered at eye level, something deep within me resonated, like a forgotten chord plucked gently back to life. I whispered, "What is this?" "It is the imprint of your soul." The star pulsed faintly, but only half of it glowed. The other half flickered, dim and frail, as if fighting to remain alight. My stomach twisted. What happened to it? Two possibilities. Either your soul was wounded, or part of it has been suppressed or altered. My breath faltered. Altered? A force may have sealed away what you were born with, a memory, a truth, a power. Cold prickles swept down my arms. Altered, suppressed, by who? Why? The star flickered again, wavering like a candle in a storm. Your full transformation will remain incomplete until the missing part is restored. A dozen questions surged up, but I could voice none of them. At least not during this visit. But, fuck it, I had to try. I couldn't just leave like this. I clenched my fists. "Can you fix it?" The star dimmed, then brightened, tentatively like a yes whispered through trembling lips. The starlight hallway can attempt to repair a portion of what was lost. Hope stabbed through my ribs, sharp and desperate. "Then do it. Please." Be warned, Serafina, such repair is traumatic. Many do not survive the shock. Others fail the restoration. Sweat slicked my palms. My pulse fluttered wild and frantic. "But if I don't try," I whispered, "I might stay like this forever." "Nothing is set in stone. You found this channel. You can find more." A derisive snort escaped me, echoing through the starlight hallway. It took me 30 years to find this channel. Who knows how long it will take to find another? Then try. You may awaken what has been sleeping inside you, or die in the attempt. My breath shuddered from my lips. Maybe I should have been afraid. Maybe I should have thought of the people in my life who loved me, who would carry my absence like a wound that never quite closed. But all I could think about was the years of being overlooked. The endless judgments, the whispers, the labels, ordinary, defective, unremarkable. A life spent being told what I lacked, instead of what I might become. I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who learned early that survival meant shrinking, enduring, accepting less than she deserved. The woman who had lived half a life because the rest was hidden from her. If I walked away now, if I chose safety over truth, that girl would stay buried forever. I drew myself upright. "I'm tired," I whispered. "Tired of living a life I don't understand. Tired of half-truths. Tired of not knowing myself." I lifted my chin. "I want the truth. I want all of me, no matter the cost." The star flared brighter, as if answering something deep within me. "Then touch it." My throat tightened. "And that'll start it?" "Yes." I stared at the little blue star, the mirror of my soul that flickered like something starved. Alina's presence wrapped me in a gentle pulse of warmth. "Whatever happens," she murmured, "you do not face it alone." My eyes stung as I reached out. My fingertip brushed the star. Light exploded, white, blinding, searing. Pain tore through me like claws raking flesh and bone and memory and soul in a single merciless sweep. My scream was swallowed whole by the roaring brilliance. And then, there was nothing but light and agony. Kiran's Pove. By the time I reached the edge of the New Moon Institute, I was burning. A Ashar prowled just beneath my skin, pressing, pushing, snarling. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest entirely. The bond convulsed inside me, agony spiking through my chest like a lightning strike. Sarah, she was hurting. I didn't think. I couldn't. I abandoned the car where it skidded to a halt, door hanging open, engine still running. My bones twisted mid-stride, claws tearing my palms, teeth lengthening as Ashar surged forward, shifting us halfway to Wolf. "She's in pain. Run!" Branches tore at my arms as I sprinted up the forest path with preternatural speed, scenting nothing but the echo of Sarah's anguish and the sharp crackle of ancient magic. The sky above the rear mountain trembled with silver light, like a storm, like a warning. I was almost at the barrier's edge when a figure stepped directly into my path. I skidded to a halt, boots gouging trenches into the dirt. I'd never met the amber-eyed man before me, but surveillance reports made the director of the New Moon Institute instantly recognizable. "Alois," I growled, chest heaving. "Move." The old man didn't budge. Slight as he was, his stance was unyielding, steady as forged iron. "You cannot enter, Alpha Blackthorn." I bared my teeth. "My mate is suffering. She needs me." You're the last thing she needs, a voice snapped from the left. Lucian emerged from the shadows, coat snapping in the wind, eyes hard and sharp. Red flooded my vision. You, I snarled. What the fuck are you doing here? The same as you, he answered, the coolness in his tone razor-edged. The only difference is that I can actually help Sarah. My fangs bared in warning. This was you, wasn't it? My voice cracked like a whip. You dragged her into this, lured her here. Lucian's jaw tightened. If I wanted to lure her anywhere, you wouldn't know until she was standing on the other side. You fucker, I spat, lunging at him. Ashar roared, claws bursting from my fingertips, but before I could sink them into Lucian's throat, Alois flicked his wrist, and an unseen force crashed between us, solid as a wall. The impact rattled my bones and sent me staggering backward. Lucian hissed as he steadied himself. You think I want her in pain? Unlike you, everything I've done since I met Sarah has been to help her. Then why the fuck is she in pain? I barked. Why can I feel her agony? His eyes darkened. Because you're the one she chose to tether to. She's a fucking brilliant woman, except for that one stupid mistake. You want to place fault for her predicament? Look in the fucking mirror, he spat. If she hadn't been repressed her whole life, she wouldn't be on such an arduous path to recover herself. And you were part of the problem. His words hit harder than any fist. But before I could spit back something vicious, another agonized pulse ripped through the bond. My knees threatened to give way. Sarah was screaming, not out loud, her body was nowhere near us, but through the tether that bound her soul to mine. I gasped, gripping my chest. Sarah, goddess Sarah, hold on. Lucian whipped his head toward the barrier, eyes wide and alert. I may not be able to feel her pain like you, he gritted out. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt to know that she suffers. Fuck off, I hissed. Another jolt of agony struck, doubling me over, a raw groan tearing from my clenched jaw. Knowing Sarah is in pain gives me no joy, but I must admit, your anguish is not entirely unpleasant to witness. I was going to rip Lucian Reed's head right off his fucking body. I lunged toward him again, but Alois snapped his fingers. Power crackled like lightning across the ground. Lucian and I were yanked apart, dragged back several feet by invisible hands. For the love of the goddess, Alois snapped, voice booming through the clearing like thunder. The woman you both claim to love is inside fighting for her life, and the two of you are out here ready to tear each other's throats out? Is this how you intend to support her? Shame and fury warred in my gut. Lucian grit his teeth, fists trembling as he turned to Alois. How long has she been inside? Long enough, Alois replied, and the trial is reaching its climax. My heart plummeted. Trial. This wasn't research. This wasn't exploration. This was a crucible. Sarah was enduring something soul deep, something meant to break or reshape her. You have to let me in, I panted. You have to let me get to her. Alois looked at us with tired disappointment. You cannot help her by charging in. The barrier will kill you before it even lets you touch it. I don't care, I snarled. If she's hurting in there, if by some miracle you make it in, you'll only rip her further apart, Alois barked. Your bond is sacred, yes, but cracked, incomplete, half-dormant. His gaze sharpened. If you try to pull her back using that damaged tether, it could rebound on both of you, or sever completely. My stomach knotted painfully. Lucian cursed under his breath, pacing. Can she make it? Alois didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Another wave of Sarah's pain crashed through me. This time it was not a stab but a crushing weight that forced me to one knee. Ashar howled inside, battering my ribs, clawing at my insides until my whole body trembled. I couldn't just stand by. I couldn't. Alois, I rasped, please, there has to be something, anything. Just tell me what to do to help her. The only thing you can do, he said quietly, is control yourself and lend her strength in the one way available to you. I looked up, every nerve ending standing at attention. How? Alois gestured behind him. A towering moonstone, smooth, giant, luminous, sat like a dormant star embedded in the earth. It pulsed faintly with pale white light. The moonstone amplifies spiritual resonance, Alois explained. If you quiet your mind and channel your bond through it, she may feel your presence on the other side of her trial. The strength you can lend her might not be much, but it may make all the difference. Lucian frowned. And me? Alois shot him a sideways look. You may also sit. But you do not have a bond. You can only offer ambient support. Lucian's jaw flexed, and he glanced away with a frustrated huff. My hands shook as I neared the moonstone. It radiated cool power, a steady heartbeat pulsing beneath its surface. The light thrummed like moonlight woven into stone. Sarah's pain struck again, sharper and raw, like something inside her was being torn apart. A strangled groan ripped from my throat. "She's hurting," I whispered, voice breaking. "Alois, she's hurting." He placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "Then focus. Sit. Anchor her the only way you can." I lowered myself before the moonstone, palms pressed flat against its surface. Its coolness seeped into my skin, into my bones. Slowly, Ashar stilled, his frantic rampage quieting into a low, keening tremor. I shut my eyes. "Sarah," I breathed. The bond vibrated weakly. "I'm here," I whispered. "Just hold on. I'm here." The moonstone pulsed, once, again. I poured everything into it, every memory, every regret, every scrap of love I had never displayed right. "Come back to me, Sarah," I whispered, "please." The bond trembled. My palms pressed harder to the moonstone, breath shaking as I anchored myself. I anchored her. Although I hated that this was all I could do, I was grateful that there was at least something I could do. If I could not storm her battlefield, I would wait at its edge until she returned. Lucian's Pove. Kieran went still when he finally settled before the moonstone. I watched the shift happen in his body, a slowing of breath, a lowering of shoulders, a gradual unclenching of muscles that moments earlier had been coiled like a beast ready to rip through mountains. His hands pressed flat to the pale surface, the stone thrumming with a pulse that answered the rhythm inside him. In that instant, a feeling I had always forbidden myself to acknowledge around him surged up, unbidden. Envy. Not of his strength, not of his title, not of his place in the world, but of that tether between him and Sarah, frayed as it was, fractured as it might be, cracked down its divine center yet still undeniably alive. He could feel her pain. I could not. He could reach her. I could not. Logic whispered that he was doing what was best for her. My rational mind knew Sarah would feel the bond through that moonstone, knew that Kieran's stabilizing influence might very well be the difference between her surviving this trial or being consumed by it. But the part of me I kept locked beneath iron discipline, the part with fangs and old wounds, snarled at the sight. "Fate," it hissed, "has already chosen, and it is not you." I forced a slow breath through my nose, willing my exterior to remain composed. The air around the barrier crackled again, silver magic rippling like a shiver across the mountain. Alois folded his hands behind his back, as serene as if he were watching dawn break, not two alphas straining against the leash of set boundaries. "Open away," I said quietly. Alois didn't turn. "No," I stepped toward him. "You allowed him to help." "Kieran does not enter," he corrected. "He lends her steadiness from afar. You would attempt something else entirely." I stiffened. "My presence will not harm her. There is no fracture between us." Alois finally looked at me, and the weight of that gaze hit with unexpected force. "You trust her," he said, "but not enough." My jaw clenched. "You presume. You think if she loses her footing, it should be you who pulls her upright," he continued, unmoved. "You think she needs your guidance to rise, and you fear, deeply, that she may rise without you." The words struck with a surgical precision that fissured something inside me. A crack right down that cultivated calm I wore like a second skin. "That is why you are always by her side," Alois went on. "Always behind her. You want her to soar, but you accept her falling, so long as you are the one to catch her. This is not about Sarah needing help. It is about you needing to be the one who gives it." His gaze gentled. "Lucian Reed, if you truly trusted her future, you would not try to cage it under your wing." My throat tightened. "She is no common bird," he murmured. "She is a phoenix, destined to fly far beyond the reach of those who mistake possession for protection." I looked away, swallowing hard. Behind us, Kieran sat in perfect stillness, head bowed, the moonstone's glow rising around him like soft breath. His aura, once a storm, had softened to a quiet pull, a warm gravity steadied by purpose and devotion. It twisted something sharp and merciless beneath my ribs. Sarah was fighting for her life inside that barrier, and the man who'd caused her the most pain in the world was the one with the ability to reach her, even from miles away. And me? I was reduced to waiting. I was a man of great patience. But idleness, that had never been my strength. My fingers curled at my sides. I cannot simply stand here. Alois gave the barest shrug. Then don't. The path in is restricted, but the path out is wide open. I clamped my mouth to trap a growl. I did not come all this way to be held back, to be told to sit on my ass and twiddle my thumbs. If I could not enter through the front, then I would find another way. The mountain's terrain was vast. I knew its geography better than Kieran, better than most wolves who hadn't spent half their youth studying old maps and older wards. The barrier wasn't flawless. No enchantment ever was. Cracks existed in everything. Weak points lived in every crafted thing, especially magic woven by beings older than history. I bowed my head slightly to Alois, a gesture of courtesy, respect. It was either that or I flipped him off. His words meant nothing. I did not wish for Sarah to fall, but was it truly wrong to want to stand at her side? Whether she broke or rose, I just wanted to be there, to be the one she saw first. So she would realize we might not share a mate bond, but I was the one who'd been there for her, unwaveringly, since the very beginning. I turned and slipped into the tree line from where I'd come. The shadows welcomed me like old allies. I drew a breath, forcing my pulse to steady, and activated the cloaking art passed down through my mother's side, an ability I rarely showed, rarely trusted anyone with knowing. Cool air draped over me like a veil, muting my presence, softening the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. The forest quieted. Even the magic in the air seemed to shift, warping around me so that light bent slightly at the edges. I kept my steps soft, my breathing shallow, left, up, over the ridge. The barrier shimmered faintly between the pines, a curtain of silver-dusted air. If I could find the right angle, maybe approach from the ravine where the wards thinned to account for runoff, perhaps I could slip through. But the deeper I went, the stranger the forest became. Fog gathered, thin at first, then denser. It clung low to the ground, then rose slowly, swirling around my legs. The path twisted subtly, not enough to alarm a normal traveler, but enough that I noticed, and I'd studied enough enchantments to recognize this for what it was, an illusion, gentle and soft, but sly and misleading. My next step sank deeper into mist. When I moved forward, the mountain ridge I'd been approaching seemed no closer. I adjusted my course, sliding left, veering uphill, but the terrain curved quietly back on itself, a loop. I let out a slow breath. "Alois," I hissed under my breath, "you sly old fox." Another flare of spiritual energy pulsed through the mountain, bright and cutting, slashing through the fog like lightning. My heart seized. "I should be with you, Sarah," I whispered, anger and longing tearing through the words. Not pacing a phantom trail like a restless spirit. The urge to run, to rip through the illusion through brute force, rushed up like wildfire. But I knew that would only cinch the snare tighter. And the truth, silent and unwelcome, seeped into my bones. Kieran could sit still beside a moonstone and reach her soul. I, with all my knowledge, all my secrets, all my power, could walk every hidden path on this mountain and never reach my destination. Never reach her.